Let's get a check on the global oil market. Now, it's the energy market. We see, according to International Energy Agency, world fossil fuel demand is set to peak by 2030. In its annual World Energy Outlook, the IEA says peaks in oil, natural gas and coal demand were visible this decade in its scenario based on government's current policies. That's the first time this has happened. Joining us for this conversation now is Wachira Kariuki, Head, Training and Research, Windsor Brokers, joining me from Nairobi. Great to have you on the show.
Thank you, Ladi. Always a pleasure to be here.
So talk to me now, what does this forecast mean for the global energy markets by the IEA?
Right. So the global forecast was released a while back, and it predicted that oil would oscillate between a high of around $90 a barrel and maybe $40 a barrel. What they didn't take into account is the geopolitical issues that would come into play that would completely affect that. They used their assessment based on production, consumption, and stable prices, and the fact that governments were doing different things to stabilize the economy. Saudi was, for the first time, had cut. This entire conversation came after Saudi decided to cut production and reduce the glut that was there in the market. So they did what they thought was best, made the decisions they could at that time, but geopolitical forces, as usual, have come in and completely changed the game plan. So governments right now are trying to do what they can best with what they have in their coffers as of now.
And what kind of policies can African governments put in place to, benefit from this forecast?
Right. Yeah, fantastic. Good question, Ladi. So the governments are different people. For example, it depends on which, what end of the stake you're holding. You have production countries, Saudi, of course, Canada, and a few other countries that have significant reserves. Then they'll probably stand well to hold the supply and drill less so that the value can continue increasing. If you're a consuming nation, like most of Africa and most of the countries in the BRIC zone, for example, then I strongly suggest they start buying huge amounts in reserve, and preferably in their currencies if possible, or at least shoring up their reserves, because we don't know how far this thing could go. It's been oscillating between a high of $90 a barrel, $92 a barrel, and a low of $78 a barrel. So we need to see it hit a high of 89.55, yeah. So there's a bit of instability, so each government to his own. But for government policies, I would strongly suggest they start shoring up on their reserves and their capacity to purchase that fuel forward as far forward as they can.
All right, let's get a check on the oil market prices now. Seems to be pressured by selling activity. Do you think oil prices will go down lower, in the near term from here?
Good question, Ladi. So on the daily outlook, right now we're at a price of $83.86 per barrel. There's a very strong support at 82.79. It's a daily and a weekly support, right? That's just a technical aspect of trading, analyzing a chart on oil, right? So it's called a double bottom. It's a candlestick formation, which simply means once the price hits that particular level, it hits what is called a very strong support. It has done that 3 times, rebounding off that particular price, and it hit that price, strangely enough, yesterday. Right, and as such, today there has been a slight uptick, and we expect that uptick to continue for the next couple of days because that support has not been broken in over 3 weeks. But of course, should that support be broken, then it's free fall. Oil could drop up to say $60 a barrel, or they are about $80 a barrel, sorry, because right now we're at 83.88. My technical analysis means it's going to bounce back to at least $87.2 a barrel, which is a segment and the zone it has been trading in, between $89 a barrel and $82 a barrel. It has not found any strength based on demand to break the top or any particular supply to break the bottom. It's playing in what is called a technical zone of $80 a barrel to $89 a barrel. We wait to see if there's going to be any strength to break those particular resistances. As at now, those are the technical aspects of it. It's definitely an uptrend. The question is whether it's going to break the upside or hold on the downside. So we are watching and seeing whether events like the Hamas war is going to trigger any unusual demand and supply issues. Mr. Ladi, sir.
Right, and definitely I know traders will be watching out for that double bottom bound to see which way it goes. But what are you seeing that could drive sentiment in the oil market this week? We're midweek now. What are we seeing for Thursday, Friday?
Definitely geopolitical issues. It's not going to be driven by technical issues. Geopolitical issues, the president of the U.S. was in Israel. There was a bit of stabilization. The Saudi government has also issued some few declarations regarding their support or the lack of it towards that particular Hamas-Israeli conflict. Their tool of trade, obviously, is oil. They could seriously detach and delink their production from Israeli war, thereby mess with the supply of oil, right? And they could use that as a weapon, right, in the geopolitical conflict, and that could easily flip things. The moment Saudi gets pulled in that particular political escalation, then definitely we'll always have a change in price. So we are watching and carefully seeing who gets pulled in that crisis, because for sure it's going to affect oil production and the price by extension.
All eyes on geopolitics right now. Always great to have your perspective. Wachira Karuki, Head Trading and Research, Windsor Brokers. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ladi. Always a pleasure. Bye-bye.